All right, let's talk Nebraska Cornhuskers. Fall practice has begun. We are getting closer and closer to the start of the 2025 regular season. Football is almost back, and to that end, we're starting to look at what new Cornhuskers, what freshmen specifically are emerging as big-time potential playmakers for the Huskers this season. And there's one guy in particular that's drawing a lot of praise, a lot of attention being put on this one freshman in particular. Kind of slid under the radar, but not anymore. He's going to be a star for the Cornhuskers. We'll break all that down in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, this Nebraska Cornhuskers squad is coming into the 2025 season with a lot of expectations, considering it is Matt Rule's, historic third year of the rebuild, right? Dylan Ryola, freshman year behind him, expectations, a lot more talent on the squad overall. We're all really expecting Nebraska to take a big leap forward this year. So that means a lot of guys got to step up, whether they're upperclassmen or freshmen. And there's one in particular that's really emerging as a key playmaker when you listen to what the Cornhuskers are doing with him, finding ways to get him on the field, and also what the coaches are saying. Let's pull up our first set of reports here. Then we'll get into some more information on the other side. This first one is courtesy of Hastings, the Hastings Tribune. It's a little bit of a long report, so bear with me. When Nebraska football made the decision following spring camp to move true freshman Isaiah Mazi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Please fact check me if I'm screwing that up. I assume it's Mazi. If it's Mose or something else, please correct me. From wideout to running back, nobody was more thrilled for him than new Huskers wide receiver coach Daikiel Shorts. However, Shorts didn't let him go without a fight. After spending the spring around Mazi and seeing his potential at wide receiver, Shorts was ready to develop him throughout fall camp and this year's season. When it is Mazi, you fight to keep him in your room, Shorts said. Sometimes you get overruled. He's a really special player and a really good kid. He works extremely hard and will be successful no matter where he is at. Mazi, the son of Nebraska assistant Jamar Mazi, was a 4-star wide receiver commit in Nebraska's 2025 class. What's interesting, just a quick sidebar here, 24/7 Sports has him a 3-star, and it's such a weird line of demarcation where you become a 3-star versus a 4-star, 2-star versus a 3-star. That can mean all the difference in terms of media and what people like me say about a recruiting class, but honestly, the difference between a 3/4, a 4/3, it doesn't really matter when these guys get on the field. It's just an interesting thing. We get so caught up. Is he a 3? Is he a 4? All that matters is how he plays football, so just a kind of interesting little tidbit there. He enrolled in January. He made a huge impression to Holgerson during spring camp, putting himself in position to play in early games. Report goes on to say, only now it won't happen at the position he expected. Holgerson said on Thursday that Mazi's move to running back was for depth purposes behind starter Emmett Johnson. The Huskers also have Mekhi Nelson, Quentin Ives, and true freshman Connor Booth vying for playing time. The expectation, Holgerson said, is for Nebraska to use 3, maybe even 4 running backs throughout the season. So Mazi will get his opportunities. We're going to do what's best for the team, Short said. Mazi has a chance to be a really special player. He's very versatile, unique, and will have a chance to help us wherever he is at. All right, so it's important to understand, even though the running back room has a lot of bodies, already has a lot of talent, you only move players. And this happened when I played. I played D1AA FCS, small-time football, but it's true in big-time football. It's what we've seen all the time. It's what I saw in person. Players only get moved to positions where they can play more, right? You don't move a player to move him down the depth chart, right? Not at the collegiate level. Sometimes you may see that at the professional level, but not in collegiates, right? You're trying to, if you move a guy from a wide receiver to running back in this case, or offensive line to defensive line, whatever it may be, D-line to O-line, you're trying to find a way to get him on the field. You're like, gosh, he's a good player, but man, we need more help here, or we could use his skill set here. If we move him here, he can get on the field faster. He can really help us out. Because remember, with transfers and NIL and all that, if you bring in a guy as a wide receiver and you move him to running back, there's going to be other schools, it's going to happen, that are going to call him up and say, hey, listen, man, if you still want to play wide receiver, you can come here and we'll float you a nice big old check. Now, Mazi's a little different with his dad and the relationship there, but still, that's a reality. That is still a concern that factors in every decision. That's why every time you see a player move to a new position, it's a sign they want him to get him on the field. But here's where it gets very interesting. Let's go ahead and pull this up here. This is a report from SI.com talking about the running back position as it sits today in fall camp. Isaiah Mazi seemed to be the number 2 option. Okay, there was a heavy running back room. He's the number 2 guy now. Now, I say this knowing that the freshman has only completed 6 practices in a Nebraska journey and is making the jump from Nebraska jersey, and is making the jump from high school wide receiver to second-string running back in a Big Ten offense. While it may sound like a stretch, Mazi has long been viewed as a dynamic and versatile weapon. At Lee Summit North, he racked up over 3,200 receiving yards and 42 touchdowns, while also adding 665 yards and 11 scores on the ground. With Dana Holgerson's system demanding backs who can both run and catch effectively, Mazi's transition makes perfect sense. His explosiveness in space and natural pass catching ability could make him a legitimate complement to Johnson if his development stays on track. Okay, so now we got a reporter saying he looks like the key number 2 option. And of course, we all know, and the report highlights is Holgerson's looking for guys that can do both, looking for running backs who can run and catch out of the backfield. In today's modern, whether it's college or professional offense, versatility is key at running back. Long gone are the days where you've got a running back where you give him the ball 25 times a game and don't worry about the receiving element. You got to be a complete player. We're not talking just screens and things like that. You got to run routes out of the backfield. You got to be able to line up out wide and in the slot and run routes in today's modern offenses. You got to do it all. It's a lot harder to play running back than it used to be. So that's a big reason why I think Mazi's being moved to this position. But when you look at the data for Nebraska, I think it really shines brightly because this is, I'm just going to pull this up here on the screen. It's a lot of information, but this is just where Nebraska ranked right now in terms of receiving grade as a team in the Big Ten. On the far right is receiving grade. You can see at the top is Indiana, number 2 is Ohio State. And you work all the way down to number 11, that is Nebraska, okay? This is an area where Nebraska needs help. Obviously, 11th out of the Big Ten, not great. A sub-70, great. But what's interesting is that when you look over to rushing, very similar dynamic. You can see I had to scale it a little bit differently there. But Nebraska, once again, 11th. You can see them third from the bottom. There's 13 on the screen. In the Big Ten, averaging, about 82-ish on the ground. So they're 11th in receiving, 11 in rushing. They need help in both. Right, so it wasn't just that, hey, we need a lot of help in receiving. We've got good receivers moving to running back to maybe get on the field. No, they need help in everywhere. So right now, or in those 2 areas specifically, they need help in other places too, to be honest. But from transitioning from 2024 to 2025, they need help rushing and receiving. That's what the data says. And to be honest, if you watch the film, that's what it looked like a lot of the time last year as well. So we look at Mazi as a guy who can come in and do both. He can be the runner and the receiver. He could be, to use the NFL equivalent, he can be a Tony Pollard, formerly the Dallas Cowboys, now with the Tennessee Titans, a guy who's just a Alvin Kamara with the New Orleans Saints. He's a guy that can do both at a high level, and that's exactly what you need in today's modern offenses, and it's exactly what Nebraska needs when you look at their current, or I should say last year's results of their team. Right now, this Nebraska Cornhuskers, like I mentioned in the beginning, they've got momentum, they've got expectations. Now they got to find the right way to utilize all their new players. Mazi's off to a great start. The coaches are high on him, position coaches, offensive coordinator. They're finding a way to get him on the field. I'm expecting big things from this young, versatile playmaker come the regular season. All right, we've got a lot of other things to break down, but first, Nebraska fans, in the comment section below, got a question for you guys, and it's an interesting one considering the history of Nebraska, a little bit of a curveball. Who is the best receiving running back in Nebraska history? There's been a lot of great just natural rushers. I mean, a lot of great natural rushers in Nebraska history, of course, but who is the greatest running back in terms of a receiving threat out of the backfield in Huskers history? I mean, this is kind of a hard one. I'm really curious what you guys have to say. Let us know your answer in the comment section below. But it's also important to understand when you look at this data, I'll just go back to right here just so you can see Nebraska's receiving grade south of 70. When you have Dylan Ryola as your quarterback, and it's all about getting him year 2, right? Getting that big leap. And his numbers, and I'll just go over his numbers real quick just to refresh everyone's memory. 67% completion percentage last year, a little less than 3,000 yards, 13 scores, 11 picks. What hurts me when I look at his numbers is 6.9 yards per attempt, not taking a lot of deep shots. And that's not necessarily his fault. I think that's the receiving core. You could also make an argument that opposing defenses felt they could play matchup just across the board with these receivers, do a lot of basically aggressive man coverages, maybe have some deep help over the top when necessary, but there was no fear that these receivers could beat him deep. They could man him up and lock him down and force Nebraska to not take as many deep shots just because there wasn't a matchup advantage they could take advantage of. But one thing that you can do to beat man coverage is when you get a running back who can be a receiving threat out of the backfield, right? Because if you got a running back that's lined up obviously behind center in the tailback position, or even if he's lined up out in a slot, 9 times out of 10, if the team's trying to match up in terms of stopping the run, that's a linebacker that's going to be on him, right? And so if you get a receiving running back on a linebacker, that's a mismatch 99 times out of 100. So any game going forward where Dylan Ryola is looking for an easy mismatch, he's going to look at Mazi lined up on a linebacker and say, that's easy money, right? I've got a 3/4 star receiver lined up on a linebacker, and they want to play man-on-man on us. That's easy money. So what happens then? Teams then have to change their mindsets. Do they go more aggressive coverages? Do they try and maybe get after the quarterback faster, throw more blitzes at Dylan Ryola? Do they switch their lineup and they go more DBs on the field? That opens up the running game. If they bring more pressure at Ryola, that opens up the running game as well because you're able to run past the blitz. It's one of those under the kind of secrets that people don't talk about, is that one of the ways to beat the blitz is to run right at it. So if teams try and go hyper aggressive blitzing or they go more DBs on the field, run through them, right? We know Nebraska wants to run the football. How about if teams go a really soft zone and just say, all right, listen, we'll just go a lot of really easy zone coverage. What happens then? Ryola has easy pickings. He completes 75% of his passes just moving the football right down the field. One little mismatch nightmare can be all it takes, right? We see this a lot of times with really good programs. They'll go from one great season offensively one year and they'll take a massive dip. And people wonder why. They only lost, they lost their good running back. He went in the third round of the NFL draft, but he wasn't a Heisman winner or anything like that. Or they lost a slot receiver. He went in the sixth round. He wasn't like a special guy. But if he's a mismatched nightmare for opposing defenses, suddenly that goes away and it's a lot harder to react to it because now your opposition can really focus on taking away what you do well. They get to bring what they want to do to you instead of you dictating to them. And I think Mazi as a pass-catching running back can dictate to opposing defenses, and that will be an incredible value for Nebraska going forward. And look, when we look at this Nebraska Cornhuskers squad and we look at their offense, we need them to take a big step. They need to take a big step. Holgorsen was brought in to elevate Ryola. I'm expecting more deep shots, but I'm also expecting smarter shots. I'm expecting smarter offense. I'm expecting more versatility. I like what Steve Sarkisian does with Texas, with his receivers and running backs. I'd like to see a lot of that kind of concepts from Holgorsen with this Nebraska group, right? Now, I think Texas had better players in terms of prospects, but if you look at Nebraska's group, it's going to be a lot of maximization, right? It's going to be, we got a good player here, we got a good guy here. Let's create opportunities. Let's create situations where they can get open. And one way you can do that is with versatile players, right? Because if Nebraska, if they line up and they break the huddle with one tight end, three wide receivers, and one running back, at that point, if you're a defense, you're like, okay, they could line up, and let's say it's Mazi. They could line up and run right at us, right, with classic 11 personnel, or they could be in 5 wide with Mazi split out. And now you got to figure out as a defense, how do you handle that, right? Or do you go with a 5 wide defense with like 6 or 7 defensive backs? Or do you go with the base defense to stop the run if it's more of a traditional 11 personnel alignment, right? You're kind of stuck. You got to guess. And when you have opposing defenses guessing, you have opposing defenses playing it safe, that's when you can dictate to them as an offense. And I think that's what Nebraska needs to do this season, and I think that's what Mazi can provide. There's a reason they moved him to running back. They view him as a matchup nightmare for them to utilize for Ryola, for their offense for the entire season and for years to come. Keep an eye on this kid as he works through camp. Got to work through practices, got to keep getting better. That's undeniable, but it's very clear if you listen to the Nebraska coaching staff, if you listen to the reports, they've got a special young playmaker for the Huskers.